Bumper car rebuild part 5 on the BoilerBots channel. First up, I need to repair this trim and get the fasteners out. Some of the holes, the fasteners had actually rusted into them. So after I get the fasteners out, I begin to clean off the heavy oxidation. So I'm using like a paint stripping disc on this air tool. Then I switch to a Scotch-Brite pad that goes on the air tool. Next, I'm polishing the headlight trim rings. These are solid cast aluminum, so I have to get all the oxidation off. It's pretty tricky because you have to get on the outside and the inside, so it takes a lot of work. After I finish the trim rings around the headlights, I'm working on a piece of the trim. You can see here, there's a lot of this trim. It's all aluminum. So what I typically do is I use a paint stripper disc on the back of it where there was a lot of like body crud and Bondo and all kinds of junk, and I strip it down, and then I switch to a Scotch-Brite pad, maybe like a medium grade, and I remove a lot of the oxidation from the aluminum on the front, but those can leave a lot of swirl marks if you really get into the metal, so try to be careful. And then I just go back and forth between my coarse polishing compound and my final polishing compound on the buffing wheels here. Here I'm working on the solid cast piece that goes on the tail of the cart. So this had a few studs in it, and then those studs were in pretty bad shape, so I decided I'll just remove the studs and put thread inserts in. So that's what I'm doing here. The screw that holds the small window was stuck in the casting, so I had to drill it out, tap a new hole, and that's what I'm doing now. Now I'm testing some rubbing compound to see how it'll recondition the paint, just to make sure it won't cause damage or anything. So it looks like it's working pretty well. So I get an air tool to start applying that rubbing compound, and because I really need to strip a lot of the heavy oxidation off the surface of the old original enamel paint. After spending a little bit of time on the back left section, I realized that the rubbing compound actually can't take off a lot of overspray that's on the paint from wherever this thing was stored. It's like someone was painting their house and they just splattered paint all over it. So what I'm doing is I'm using acetone, and it seems to remove whatever that paint is. Maybe it was some latex paint. After giving the paint some time to recover from basically washing it with the acetone, the next day I'm using the air tool and the heavy rubbing compound again to remove all the oxidation layers off the paint, so you can see the color effectively coming back to where it almost matches that middle section where the back pull went. So it's working pretty well. So I proceed to work my way around the fenders and eventually to the hood. Moving on to the front nose piece, I am now polishing the aluminum bars that sort of break up the front and support the grill. So those are kind of tricky. They were a really heavy cast aluminum. They didn't have a good finish on it, so I had to use the Scotch-Brite pads again and the air tool to take off all the heavy oxidation, and then I just moved to a finer Scotch-Brite pad to sort of polish it, but I didn't actually use the polishing and buffing wheels on these. Now I polished the red paint on the front nose with the same rubbing compound, the same air tool, and once I finish that, I spray paint the Bondo black so that basically you won't notice it underneath that front aluminum bar. Back to another piece of trim here. You can see where I've polished and cleaned the back side that has just a lot of junk on it. I'm actually wearing a mask because these things are they just smell like barnyard manure and I don't know, cat urine smell. They're pretty nasty, so I'm getting all the crusty stuff off of it on the back side, and then using the Scotch-Brite pads on the front side to get that heavy oxidation off before I move to the buffing wheels. Here we are on the buffing wheel, and I spent many hours polishing all this trim. So the left wheel here has the heavy cutting compound on it, and then the right wheel has the final aluminum polish. There was so much oxidation on this aluminum that many times I had to stop while working on this, and I had to use sandpaper to basically resurface the cotton wheels so that they, could basically do their job, because they just got all gummed up with layers of oxidation and goo basically. Polishing the logo was really nice to see it start to look good. This is sort of like pretty signature piece on the side of the fenders, and I was pretty nervous that I might break it or destroy it on the buffing wheel, so I'm happy to report that nothing happened. So now it's time to install the stainless trim on the fenders that wrap around the back. So basically putting screws through the fender into those plywood blocks that are between the fenders and that centerpiece, and then I'm installing the trim. Basically it just sandwiches the stainless up against the body. So it takes a lot of work to sort of adjust everything. Nothing was is precise. It's all sort of like handmade and was probably manipulated at the factory, just kind of bent and flexed. So there's several times where I have to take it apart and put it back together to do some minor adjustments. Next, I'm putting the nameplate on the side. Just 2 screws go through the fender, and I put nylock nuts on the back side. There's a couple of areas on the body and the hood that have paint damage, but the most work needs to be touched up on the front nose. So here I've just got some acrylic paint from the craft store that looks reasonably close, so I've removed the castings for the headlights, and I'm painting around like this left headlight. There was a lot of flaking and caused by corrosion on the aluminum. Now I touch up the body itself with the same red enamel paint. Just there's places where there's just chips and scratches, and I'm not trying to make it look perfect. I just don't want it to stand out where you could see the gray primer underneath. So just touching these things quickly. Doing the same thing that you saw on the right hand side, just on the left. Attaching the fenders to the blocks of wood behind it, then put on the lower stainless steel trim pieces and adjusting and fitting everything using a air nibbler to basically nibble away some spots where the holes for the trim couldn't quite make it. I'm not sure why or how it worked originally, but I just had to trim things just to get the screws to go through this time. Here I have to take the trim back off again because the stainless was actually popping out from underneath the aluminum trim, and so I needed to make some adjustments. So I kind of nibbled some holes to move things around a little bit, and then I put a screw underneath the stainless to push it up and basically flex it, and so it couldn't slip out from underneath the aluminum trim. Next, I'm going to clean up the buckets for the headlights. These are cast aluminum again, and they're pretty nasty. I'd accumulated a lot of grime and dirt from over the years, so I basically buff the inside of them out with the Scotch-Brite pads, and now I'm installing those. One more polish to the headlight rings because I polished those first, and I felt like I didn't do as good a job as I could after I'd spent many hours polishing everything else. So polished them again. Then I mounted them to the headlight assembly with the glass lenses inserted behind them. And now gonna just fit it up and see how everything goes together. I have to make some adjustments here. The body is a little bit off, and so I decided what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some washers underneath the front where the nose basically comes down to the plywood, and lift it a little bit just to give this front cast piece a little bit of extra clearance over the front bumper. Didn't have the camera going, but I'm installing the bumper here. It took a lot of stretching and pulling, and ultimately use of a crowbar. Just got the bumper stretched out and put on. It's like wrestling an alligator, but it's on there. It's pretty good. Again, I didn't record this, but I had cleaned and polished the original seat, and now I'm fitting that. It seems to be fine. Another missed recording opportunity, but the nose is back on again, and I had just received this aluminum grill. So this is original. I ordered or purchased it from a Lusse. Fine gentleman there found one of these and sold it to me, shipped it out right away. So when I received it, it's needs a lot of polish, needs a lot of work, so that's what I'm doing here. It is aluminum, so I was able to polish it and make it look pretty good. 10 feet away, you wouldn't notice all the little defects in it. So now I got to figure out how to get this thing mounted in my front end. So there's 3 screws on each side, total of 6, and that piece of metal is basically flexed in there. However, when they made these, they must have just hand drilled everything, so it was basic random holes that only worked for that grill and that nose. So the 6 holes that were on my nose would not line up to more than maybe 2 of the holes on that piece. So I'm just kind of deciding what to adjust and how to adjust it. Behind that aluminum polish piece is some black metal. That is basically, I think, to hide the insides of the car itself. So I still had that. I put that in. Of course, the screws are supposed to pass through these 2 things, and nothing lines up. So there's a lot of fiddling around, trying to file. I was using like an air tool to grind out and file some of the holes to move them and adjust things, because I'd already, tapped and put thread inserts in the nose, and so these pieces needed to be modified to work with what was already there now. The final assembly here is that inside the car body, I'm installing what you could think of as a firewall, because remember, there would normally be the electric motor and drivetrain behind the front. So this firewall, I think, just keeps people's feet from punching out that front nose, and also just kind of blacks it out. So that firewall needed to have the holes enlarged, just to match with the body and everything else that was going on, because this thing had been flexed and kind of stretched when I reinstalled it. So I put in that firewall, I put the nose on, and then you have to reach way up underneath there and put long 5/16 bolts into that front casting. So that's what I'm doing. And of course, the last thing to do is take it on a test drive. So here I just pushed it out into the driveway and I take it for a spin. This test drive was done before I received the polished aluminum grille insert. So you'll notice that the front grille is not fully assembled yet. But I was running out of time, so I wanted to test drive it.
Need more air in the tire.
Here we go.
Put more air in the tire.
Well, that's it for this video. I think there'll be another one after this where I'm going to upload clips from open source, and I'll do a few more test drives in the driveway and just show the car running around. Thanks a lot for watching, and stay tuned.